boss, the Attorney General of South Carolina. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about what we do at the Department of Crime Victim Comm. Just a little bit about myself, so you think I'm just not walking off the street and coming up and talking about this. I've been in victim services probably 25 years. I started as a victim advocate at the Richland County Sheriff's Department, went on to work with the Solicitor's Office, went on to work with Governor Hodges and Governor Sanford and Governor Haley as the ombudsman, and then I have landed myself here. I've also worked in probation and parole, and I've worked at prosecution commission. So I have a very varied history in victim services. This is my last stop before I retire. Hopefully, I've got too many white hairs on my head to be standing up here anymore. So hopefully this will be my last stop, but I really have enjoyed it because I think that I've got to meet a lot of people. Our particular organization or our agency is actually within the Attorney General's Office Crime Victim Services Division. We are new, brand new. We were moved legislatively from the governor's office in 2017 into the Attorney General's office, and it was not the governor's office. I'm sorry, it was the Department of Administration is where we came from. Yes, and so to give you a little bit of history, so that was my background in victim services for comp. For compensation, it was actually born out of workers' compensation probably 30 years ago. It has its roots in being able to compensate people, obviously for workers' comp, for people who got injured while they were working, right? This is compensating victims of crime who were injured while they were becoming the victim of a crime. So if somebody assaults you and you get a broken jaw and you have to go get medical services, then if you didn't have health insurance or you didn't have any other forms of finance, we would try to help you depending on eligibility. So that's kind of where it's at now. I like to tell history about this agency because I am finding, and I've only been a deputy director, 3 years is my anniversary today. I'm finding that the history of the workers' comp, as well as the history of where the agency has been at each of the places, has a bearing on what they do today. It also has a bearing on the culture of how we look at victims of crime. In other words, you can't look at a victim of a crime like you would look at somebody who's applying for workers' comp. We might have been born out of workers' comp, but you can't do that with victims of crime. It's a complete, so the idea is the same about compensation, but you can't just do that because it's a different world 30 years out. Here's our mission statement. You all can read. Just to tell you briefly, we do two things. We compensate crime victims, but then we also have one section that's dedicated to auditing any county, town, or municipality that has a law enforcement agency. The reason we do that is because back in 1996, there was a law that was passed that said, look, if you have a sheriff's department or a city police department, a town police department, and you are collecting fines and fees based on those tickets, a portion of those tickets or that monies and fines and fees, it goes into the pot for victim services. My auditing section is in charge of making sure that that money is being used for victim services. So if you, and this has happened somewhere in the state, if you say you're going to use that money to give it to your victim advocate for a car, you're going to buy a car, you're going to say, hey, I need to buy this car. Please, let's use the money from what's called Act 141 funds. We want to use it so that we can be able to transport victims. If we find out that the assistant chief deputy has gone and used the car for their purposes and the advocate doesn't have the car to use, that would be a violation of those Act 141 funds. So those are the two main missions that we have.
I have a question.
Yes.
So those funds are kept in the local city or town for victim services.
Yeah.
Is there a guideline that's generic for the whole state, how they can be used, or do they make their own guidelines or regulations for that?
No. So typically what happens is if there's a question like somebody said, can we use the money to buy Kleenex boxes for our victims who are sitting in the waiting room? Well, Yeah, typically you can, but we have guidelines, number one, so you would look there to see if it's there. If it's not there, you just call any one of the auditors and they'll be able to tell you whether or not it can be done.
So I know there was some funding for people who are victims of crime for burial expenses and
Yes.
things. Does it come from this funding
No,
or
so that's,
something totally
yes,
different?
it is. Mhm. The monies, those Act 141 funds that are within those county and city and town budgets, they are specific to not just paying for a victim advocate, but for the services, for a victim. So if the victim needs to be transported and you need a car, or if you're just starting a program and you need a victim advocate, right? You would check to see how much money, first of all, is in that Act 141, because if you're in Pageland, South Carolina, that if there's a police department there, that's actually going to be a smaller amount than what you would find in the Greenville County Sheriff's Department. Does that make sense? So,
There are no state funds they can pull from. It's all local funds.
there are state funds. So, well, I don't know about state funds, but now when we talk about your counties and your cities and your towns, the county would be, so let's take, this is Richland County. The sheriff's department, money comes from the sheriff's department, their tickets. Money comes from general sessions court, whenever somebody gets convicted in general sessions court. All that money goes into the county Act 141 fund. If you are a county victim services program, which means if you're an advocate at the sheriff's department, if you are an advocate at the solicitor's office, if you are an advocate in the court system, there's a possibility, depending on how your county has set it up, as to whether or not you can use those funds. The city of Columbia is completely different because they have a different jurisdiction, a smaller jurisdiction. So they also collect their own, I guess, pot of money, so to speak. But all of it is tracked and it must be used for victim services.
And you have to regulate all those pots
Or
audit.
yes, audit every year. As a matter of fact, just this last year, my team did 364 audits on 364 agencies. So they were able to, they can recoup money just because we've had places that are not, they are misusing the funds. And so when we find that out, we try to recoup it back and put it back into the victim. Does that help you? Okay.
A little bit.
Okay. I think I'll answer your question here in a couple more
Yes,
slides.
I always jump ahead.
Whatever we do, no matter what we do, and it doesn't matter if you're me or a victim advocate at the sheriff's department or the police department or the solicitor's office, specifically, even Steve's group, we all are under the overarching authority of what is in the South Carolina Constitution Victims' Bill of Rights, Article 1, Section 24. Everything we do as it relates to victims of crime is in that constitutional amendment. Now, the second set of statutes there actually is specific to what we do at the Department of Crime Victim Compensation. So if you're a victim of a crime, you file with us an application, and I think all of you should have a copy, except that envelope right there. That is our application. It is located online. We unfortunately have not gone into the 21st century, and you're not able to submit it online. You would have to, you can fill it out online, but you would eventually have to print it out and you'd have to sign it and send it in to us. It is incredibly archaic. And at 57 years old, I can tell you it's incredibly archaic because I'm a paper person. Every meeting I go to, I have a piece of paper. But really, for the convenience and for the benefit of crime victims, it's easier to be able to submit online. We just can't do it yet. So the application is actually in there. It's a 4-step process. You would fill out the application, or a victim advocate would help the victim fill the application out. And then we would look at it just to make sure all of the things are there, right? You've got to have your name, the crime, you've got to sign, you've got to make sure that you're telling us whether or not, because we are the payer of last resort. So you'll have to let us know, do you have medical insurance? Do you have other insurances that will kick in before we can pay? Okay, so that's the first step. Now, if you make it from the first step to the second step is eligibility. And this is really what's going to either move you forward or move you to the side. Excuse me. In this step, we are really looking to make sure that the victim did not do anything that contributed to what happened to them. So if you are in a bar fight, or let's not do a bar fight. Let's just do a flat out assault. I'm not going to go to bar fight. If you have just a flat out assault, but the victim is the one who came up and just cussed him out, got in his face, pushed him, did everything he could to provoke him, right? And then the person that he was doing that to turns around and just wallops him and takes a good swing and punches his face, and that person suffers a broken jaw. He would apply probably to us for help if he had no assistance, right? But the thing is, we would have to take into consideration that he started it, right? You can't just you can't just do that. It's one of those things where we'll try to help you, but you're not going to get 100% help from us.
Clean hands.
Yeah. We really try to do that. Now it gets sticky, and I can give you an example right now because it's currently one that I'm dealing with. But you have people who choose to, you have college students who want to try drugs, right? They're in college, they want to try drugs, they don't know that it's laced with fentanyl, and the next day they're dead. You have a grieving family, no matter how they died, they have lost a child, and so we try to help if we can, but again, you chose to go and take those drugs. You made the decision to go with a friend and go check it out and see what ecstasy feels like, right? No, you did not know it was laced with fentanyl, and no, you had no idea that fentanyl it's almost a fatality if you touch it, inhale it, or do whatever. It's those kind of situations that we have to come back together and we have to talk about, because on its face it's going to be denied. You've got what we call contributory conduct in that situation. Okay, so if you make it past eligibility, you would go to the third step, which is restitution, and I'll explain that later. And then, of course, you would go to the part where we actually pay out the bill if we can pay it out. Okay. We talked about the application. There are some things like the signature. We really need the signature. So we've had hospitals who I think are trying to help, but they're going to take it upon themselves, because what are they wanting to do? They want to pay that hospital bill, right? And they know that we can pay a hospital bill. Some have been taking it upon themselves to sign the application. No, that needs to be signed by the victim of the family. Now, if it's a minor, it needs to be the parent or guardian, or if it's somebody who's incapacitated, it's the next of kin, right? Because we have people who are shot, they are not conscious, they can't sign anything, but they would have a next of kin who would be able to do that. So once we have the application, I explained to you about the eligibility. This process right here between victim support and eligibility, it takes a bit, because we require the assistance of law enforcement to help us figure this out. They are required by law to give us an incident report to let us know exactly what happened in the crime. Now, a lot of times, law enforcement will say, hey, we can't share everything with you. Well, or why are you awarding this person? Well, our criteria is not the same for them. They are looking at probable cause, right? They're looking at probable cause to arrest. We are looking at the behavior of the victim to see if it's possible to go ahead and compensate them. With restitution and subrogation, we have to look at the claim for this, and here's the reason why. Because if you're in a felony DUI, most likely there's insurance involved, and there's also probably a lawsuit involved. We are still the payer of last resort, so we'll hold the claim until everything settles out on subrogation with insurance. And then with restitution, if the case goes to the solicitor's office and they're able to get that offender to pay restitution, we will offset the award with the restitution. Or they'll just say, hey, you owe DCBC $15,000 because they paid $15,000 to the victim to help them with their medical bills. That makes sense.
Is there a cap per claim?
Per claim, yes, $15,000. That's all we can do. Extraordinary circumstances, you can kick it up to 25, but it's on appeal. It's like a request to the Crime Victim Advisory Board. They would be the ones. So we had a guy who, I think 10 or 15 years ago, he was shot in the face. and he ended up in long-term care. And so they were able to give him like a prosthetic to help him. But I told you it was 10, 15 years ago, the prosthetic started to wear out. He was an eligible claim 10, 15 years ago. He still had money left over, but not a lot. His care worker, I think it's continuing care worker, came to us and said, look, he really needs a new prosthetic. It's just not holding up anymore. Is there anything that you all can help us with? So, we looked at it. He was like at $14,999. I looked at it with my manager, then we went to the board and we said, look, he's got 10,000 more if you will approve it to help him buy that prosthetic for his mouth. Those are expensive because what we gave still didn't cover all of the expenses for when he was going to go get it, but he was able to get it. So those are what we call extraordinary circumstances. And they are really upon request only, just because we have to be very mindful. If I've always told, when I used to work at probation and parole, I taught agent basic classes. I don't know, like every 2 months I would teach agent basic, and I would look at them and I'd say, because their job is to help the offender, be rehabilitated, right? And I would tell them, I would be so ever grateful that if you rehabilitated all of them so they didn't commit a crime again, and I wouldn't have any crime victims. I said, take me out of a job. I would love it. But that's not going to happen, right? And it won't happen probably in my lifetime. So for me at DCVC, I try to make sure that we maintain a healthy fund, but yet maximize the effort to make sure that we're helping victims. Now, it rarely stops here. It will now if insurance or restitution comes into play, but an eligible claim will rarely stop here. The last step is going to be payment. And so I'm just going to spend a little bit of time here where you were talking about funeral expenses. I think in your packet, and I apologize if it's not in there, but compensation can pay for medical bills, dental bills, eyeglasses, counseling, lost wages, and funeral and burial expenses. If it comes to us, we have the bill. If they're all allowable expenses, we really do try to pay what we can. Now, I will tell you that if you're shot and you're in the hospital a couple of days, our maximum $15,000 if you have no insurance is just not. But we will do what we can. We've even tried to not so much intervene, but talk to the hospitals and go, look, is there any way that you all can put this bill in charity, right? I mean, because they have so many other avenues, hospitals do, to be able to forgive those expenses. And so we try, not always successful, but we also, so if you have somebody who needs medical, dental, lost wages, and funeral expenses, we have to make that $15,000 last all the way through. And so we would look, if you are a gunshot wound victim, chances are you'll be in the hospital, you'll come out, but you'll probably need follow-up visits that probably need to be paid for. So we would always try to pay on the main hospital bill, look to see if we can help out to pay the follow-up bill, look to see how much lost wages they have, and look to see if there was dental work that needed to be done. Always keeping in mind that if we can hold a little bit and talk to the victim at the same time, because they're the ones who are driving the boat, right? They're the ones who are going to tell us, you know what? I don't want you to pay for my medical bill. I know I'm eligible, but I don't want you to pay for any of my medical bill. I want it all to go to lost wages. Who am I to dictate that, right? I can't. I'm not living that life, and that's theirs, and they're the only ones who know. So we really try to engage in conversation with them and try to make that $15,000 work to the best of our ability. There is an appeal process. So what I just went through is all eligible claims. Those are claims that we'll pay on because they're eligible and we can do it. If it's denied for whatever reason, we have a crime victim advisory board, 11 members. They will hear denied claims. They will hear them, they will review them if the victim wishes to. So they have another chance to get assistance from us. But if we've denied it, it's probably because it's in our statute. Something has kept us from saying, yes, we're going to award you at 100%, because we really, when I say we try, we don't have to award it 100%. Even if we find contributory conduct, we can award it 75%, 50%, and 25%. So, you may not get everything, but we really will try. These are out and outright denials. These are 100% denial, and we're not going to, but we always let the crime victim know you do have the opportunity to appeal our decision. and go to the board and see what they say. I think that's it. Yes, so that's my information there.
What's the timeline of a claim going through and finishing? I mean, what does that look?
So I tell everyone 60 to 90 days. There's a 3 months in there. And the reason is because there's so many other outlying factors that help try to get us forward. I will tell you that I have conversations. Steve works with our accountability report every year. And for those of you who are in state government, love that accountability report with all its measurements. And I'm constantly talking to him. I'm like, I know that we said we're going to try to do it here, but we ended up here. So I would love to see everything done in 65 days. But if I were to be honest with you, I'm going to actually, let me tell you what it was in the last report. The last annual briefing I did, 74 days is the average time to get a claim through and paid. I wish it were faster. Because we are designed, everything that we do is designed for immediacy, right? We are designed for when the crime happens at the very beginning. I honestly wish we had more money because from my post-conviction days at probation, I do know that victims at that stage, their journey is different. Their journey 20 years later, after they lost their daughter to a kidnapping and a shooting, their journey here is completely different, and their services here are completely different. We just don't have the funds right now to be able to address this population. Right. Yes, ma'am.
Talk about victims advocate. My sister was injured in a robbery in a convenience store.
Sorry.
And she went through them and it was great. They helped her out. She
Good.
got her eye, she lost her eye in it. But yeah, they were there for every step of the way and they helped her with her medical bills and everything and her lost wages. So yeah,
I'm
that
glad
was
to
a
hear that.
godsend for her back then. That was in the mid-90s.
Yeah, when I tell you we have history, we have history. We've been around for a very long
Mhm.
time. And again, I think the culture is going to change again. And victim services is continually changing, but we're trying to move away from the whole workers' comp mentality, if that makes any sense. Yes, ma'am.
So I work for South Carolina Legal Services.
Yes.
We deal with a lot of crime victims.
Mhm.
Some of them are undocumented and
Mhm.
do not seek services as far as physical, medical, psychological. And when they get to us, they're like, well, I'm facing this situation, but I don't have money to go to a doctor. I don't have money to go to a psychologist. And what is the statute of limitation? And is there a requirement as far as documented status?
So there's deadlines in every government agency, right? Which I hate because with crime victims, it's different, especially when you're talking about people who are disclosing later in sexual assaults and domestic violence. In that particular case, if you had somebody come to you, my first question would be, when did the crime happen? When did it happen? So if it happened more than 4 years ago, we do have a statute that says we have a 4-year deadline that we're not going to pay on. All of those come to my review. I mean, a lot of what they do comes to my review in that particular case because I'm just blessed with a very good staff who will say, but Debbie, at the time, she didn't know, or at the time, nobody came to her, or at the time, there was no victim advocate, or at the time. So I'd have to have a more in-depth conversation with you about that. I will tell you, we don't consider status. So I know that there are some compensation programs. There are 50 states, and each state has a compensation program. I know there might be some states that consider immigrant. We do not. Yeah. Mhm. And honestly, that's my email address, and I'll give you all, I didn't bring any cards, but my work cell phone is 803-429-9952. So if you have a situation like that, please call me and I'll be happy to try to figure out what we can do at that stage. We have a program, we have a compensation program. We need to make sure we maximize the funds that we have. That's really what it's there for. And I try to make sure that we, even in situations like you just mentioned, to make sure that if we can do something, we will certainly try. If not, as you can tell, I have no problem speaking. And so I will start talking to people and start finding out other ways that we can try to assist that particular person. You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions? Let's give her a
Okay.
hand.
Thank you.
It's a two-part presentation.
I see.
So Good morning, y'all, and thank you so much for letting us come talk to you. Like Debbie said, she doesn't have any problems speaking, and since she took almost 24 minutes of our 30, I'm gonna kind of fly through my presentation because frankly, the first part is really boring. Doubt you're gonna care about it anyway. But I do have some good stuff, I think. I have to give you a little bit of context as to how I wound up here. And I hope Chief Hatcher doesn't mind me sharing the story. We did some focus group meetings around the state a few months ago as part of a strategic planning process that we're doing with the Victim Services Coordinating Council. Chief Hatcher or one of his associates signed him up for one of the focus groups, but he didn't come. So our office does not have a great history of dialogue with Native Americans, and we want to fix that. For one reason, the feds like us to stay in contact and say, these are some programs we offer. Are you interested? But we haven't really been very successful. You know, usually when they ask, well, what have you done to reach out to Native American communities? We say, well, we sent some emails, which is probably one of the worst ways to establish communication. So when Chief Hatcher didn't come to the meeting, I thought, well, I'm going to send him an email. I know that's kind of ironic. I just said it's the worst way, but I wrote him and I said, I'd really like to talk to you and get your thoughts on victim services for your folks. And it'd be really helpful. Be glad to meet with you by phone or in person or however you want to. He sent me an email. We swapped a couple of them and he said, I'm free this Friday. You know, have you got time to come down to Aner and meet with me? So yeah, I mean, because you never know when you're going to get another chance. So I went and talked to him. We talked for 2 solid hours. We had a great conversation. He made a couple of phone calls, one of which was to Joshua. And so we're here. And I really hope to hear from y'all. I'll tell you some stuff that we can do that I think may help some of your people. I don't know as much as I really need to know about working with the Native Americans, and I'm apologizing for that, but I'm sure trying to learn. Meeting with Chief Hatcher was a big first step. So I'm going to get on with this because we are a little bit short on time, but let me skip. Is this? Yeah, okay. That's our mission statement. What we do is different from what Debbie does. We do grants to crime victim organizations primarily. We fund a lot of victim advocates for a lot of solicitors' offices and police departments, but also a lot of nonprofits. And we, well, I'll get onto that. I don't want to get ahead of myself because if I get excited, I'm going to start saying stuff that's going to get me in trouble. And oh, please stop me before I get into trouble.
Conversation, met with some representatives from the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center that do domestic violence. And one of their biggest issues is shelters. Because there's not a lot of places for victims to go to.
Yeah.
So when I saw residential shelter, is that something similar to doing like a women's shelter?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah,
So
we.
you will help grant and fund those?
Would love to. I work with a couple of shelters myself, and it's some of my favorite site visits are going out there. They do great work and so necessary. But yeah, shelters are one thing. I mentioned victim advocates. We fund forensic nurse examiners around the state. Emergency assistance, I'll cover that in a little bit more detail, but I know I've got to keep it quiet. I mean, keep it short, excuse me. Work with human trafficking programs. Where does our money come? I'm going to skip this because y'all don't care. Statute, yeah, this is more of this stuff. Oh, well, I should go back to that one. The legislature came through for us. To give you the big picture real quickly, our federal funding has been cut quite a bit over the last few years successively. this is not taxpayer money. This is money that comes from different criminal processes that generate fines. That's funneled down to the states to distribute in the form of grants. It's gone from, oh gosh, yeah, $55 million to 12 million. And then we have to spread that around the state. The legislature did give us $10 million a couple of years ago, and then another 5 this past year to kind of make up for that difference. It's not looking great, which makes it even tougher to come to a group and say, well, we have some money, but we don't have as much money as we'd like to have. But there is some money. It depends on what you want to do with it. So the legislature is helping. That's the point I wanted to make. The Attorney General has asked them and stuck his neck out a little bit, and they have come through to the extent they could. Types of awards, I'll kind of go through this real quickly, but basically sexual abuse, spousal abuse, child abuse and neglect, underserved victims of violent crime, different sources is the only distinction. Okay, that's awkward. Just saying we have different funding sources. These are these slides that I skipped over earlier. VAWA is one that I think we might have some potential with y'all to award. Our VAWA funding is more stable. VAWA is Violence Against Women Act. You don't have to get a VAWA grant, you don't have to only serve women. You just have to primarily serve women. And that needs to be the focus of the program. And women over 11 years of age, because there are other funding streams for children. These are, female victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. Who's eligible to apply? Nonprofit organizations, public and or government agencies. These must be agencies who provide services to crime victims. That's what I have to keep. See, I didn't have time to go into my personal history because Debbie took so much time with her presentation. But I worked 28 years at DSS, and this is a whole different landscape. I have to keep reminding myself there's a crime and there's a crime victim. You know, with DSS, I dealt with child support. You know, I mean, anyway, I can't re-traumatize myself by talking about that. But okay. Organizations must, and some of this sounds imposing. Please don't take it that way. If you decide to apply for a grant, these conditions are not as bad as they look on a presentation. Provide direct services to victims of crime. Well, that is true. You got to do that. Promote within the community coordination of public and private efforts to do so. Have some means of non-federal financial support. And that's there because we can't fund an organization if their only means of sustenance is our funding. And that's just because we don't want to disperse money and then the organization just disappears. They must meet program match requirements. I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but match is basically either you put up a little bit of cash to support the grant, but you can also use volunteers. You can use manpower to make that match. And I can tell you we're pretty flexible and very understanding about that kind of stuff because a lot of people don't have money.
What's the percentage?
It's 25% on VAWA and 20% on all the rest. But if you're a nonprofit, you don't have to come up with a match. So if your tribe is a nonprofit, there's no match on the VAWA grant. So something to keep in mind. Okay, a lot of statistics, a lot of reporting. Every quarter you have to do a report with us that we send to the feds. Again, I'm glossing over some of this, I know, but I'll get to the important stuff. We have grants that range from $4,000 a year to over $1 million a year. One of the biggest grants that I manage is actually South Carolina Legal Services. We fund a bunch of attorneys and paralegals and some others. I work with Al Parker up in Greenville. Yeah, Al's great. Okay, we've done everything from a part-time salary for a house monitor at a shelter, to complex domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking programs. Some of these things are really intricate and they're wraparound and comprehensive, whatever words you want to use. They're big programs. This past year, we have funded 727 positions. Most of these are probably victim advocates, not all, but most. This year, because of the cuts in funding, we expect to only fund about 592. And that's just our guesstimate based on the applications that we received this year.
You guys don't fund legal fees.
Yeah,
You
a couple of organizations that I work with, have contracts with private attorneys to represent their victims that come to them. And some have full-time attorneys. These are examples. These are things, please think about these things. And the good news, sort of bad news too, is, there's a schedule involved in applying for grants. We are just about to start a new grant year on October 1st. But if you're interested in applying for a grant and you haven't done it yet, you've got until at least March or April to do that, to think about what you'd want to do with the money. And while our office can't help you write the grant, we will happily answer questions, and be generous with what we can do. We try not to say no. We want to help. I know there's a joke there. I'm from the government, but I won't make that joke. But like, one of the things I thought of, we have a part-time victim advocate, a small police department in the upstate, Lyman Police Department. She only works about 15 or 20 hours a week. We fund her. The police department budget doesn't pay for any of her, I don't think. If they do, it's a very small portion. Technical and financial support for a database that tracks services across multiple agencies, blah, 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 blah. That, I think I took that example from SCADVASA. Y'all probably know that agency, South Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. They maintain a database, and we help fund the maintenance because apparently it's not cheap. Cleaning and hygiene supplies for shelter housing domestic violence victims and their families. Here again, these are just examples. There are things that we can do to help that you might not even think, well, gosh, that'd be kind of cool to have. An equine therapy program. We fund one of those. The Barnabas Horse Foundation in Horry County. Well, actually, I think it's technically Georgetown. I don't know. Guardians ad litem for children and family court actions. Sexual assault nurse examiners, emergency funding for food, hotel rooms, things like replacement locks on doors. If someone broke into someone's house and they're a crime victim, that emergency fund will actually replace the lock on their door. I think some of them are even doing cameras, like Ring doorbells. We can fund cell phones, laptops, handouts, brochures. We fund therapists, attorneys. Again, most of those attorneys are contract attorneys because they're kind of expensive. More examples: forensic interviewers, a 24-hour crisis line. We fund people to staff that. Database fees. Okay, well, that's, I didn't mean to run through all that, but I'm kind of tight on time. Thank you, Debbie. And I did bring cards, by the way. So, and if you need to reach Debbie, you're welcome to write me, send me an email and I'll pass it along. But,
Is there only one office? Is there something regionally or?
no, we're just the one.
Just the one
But we have grants all over the state. We have 130 entities. No, I'm sorry, we have 130 grants. So like 115 different entities. So, I mean, it's a lot of money, in total, but, we have to spread it out kind of thin. But we, like I said, are you gonna send this out
Yes,
to them?
we are.
Okay, yeah, please keep in mind those examples that I gave because they're things that we fund. So, there won't be any, well, can they do this? Yeah, we think we can. And, of course, everybody can't get $1 million, but, if it's something, if a police department wants a part-time victim advocate that is maybe particularly trained to work with the Native American population, that's a great grant. Something like that. Anybody have any questions? Well, thanks. I really would love to hear from some of y'all, really.
And we'll,
Yeah.
we can share
Yeah, that's, can I just leave one of these with you?
Oh, yeah, I can pass them out.
Oh, I could do that, actually. Give me some more interaction.
I think, start setting you up right now.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, who passes that out?
Well, yeah, that's,
I guess I should.
Ready with all the questions?
Oh, wait.
Thanks.
All right, let's give them a hand. Thank you so much. All right, we're gonna move into our final presentation from a guest visitor from South Carolina Legal Services.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Dulce Lopez. I work with South Carolina Legal Services. I'm about to. In a minute, technical difficulties. How's everyone doing today? Getting ready for the powwows?
Yes. Worried about the weather.
Yeah.
The biggest,
You worry about the weather?
yeah. Pray for sun.
It's gonna be sunny.
A sunny day.
Okay, well, good morning. So our presentation is called Bridging South Carolina's Justice Gap, a commitment to diverse communities. So like I said, my name is Dulce Lopez. I'm an outreach paralegal for diverse communities. So what does this mean exactly? It means that I try to bridge the gap between legal resources and our diverse communities. That includes the Hispanic community, Native American community, Asian Pacific community, and other underserved communities. So what is our mission? South Carolina Legal Services is a statewide nonprofit law firm that provides civil services to protect the rights and represent the interests of low-income South Carolinians. Our vision is that all low-income South Carolinians should have full and fair access to justice. So what does access to justice looks like in South Carolina? We were part of a study, an assessment by the South Carolina Commission of Access to Justice, and they interviewed a bunch of organizations who offer legal services. And what they found out is that South Carolina residents face a significant justice gap when accessing legal services and basic human needs such as housing, family, education, financial matters. People don't have access to an attorney. So some of the main takeaways from measuring South Carolina's justice gap, which is the survey that they help or we help with, is that 7 out of every 10 households face at least one legal matter every year. 7. So that's at least 70% of our population. According to the South Carolina Civil Legal Needs Assessment, at least 20% of South Carolinians are eligible for free services, free legal aid, and 70% of those who appear in court do not have representation. Additionally, only 8% of cases have attorneys on both sides. So the numbers are really astonishing. So some other findings is that 34% of people didn't know that they could access an attorney or they had a legal problem that could be helped by an attorney. 15% of people don't know where to seek help. and 17% didn't know that it even was available for them to access legal help. Over, like I mentioned in the previous slide, over 20% of people are eligible for subsidized legal services. So that means either free services or services through a sliding scale agency. We are free legal services specifically. Out of the people in South Carolina, about 10,000 people call our intake line every year, and those applications are processed by our intake office. 14 out of 46 counties had fewer than 10 private attorneys, and 4 counties fewer than 5. And those are mainly in the rural areas. So some rural areas don't have enough attorneys, period. And over 92% of defendants in eviction, foreclosures, debt collection cases were underrepresented or not represented at all. I don't know what you think, but I think that's very sad to hear that people don't have access to an attorney. So the need for civil legal services is great. So what does this access to justice look like at South Carolina Legal Services? So I went into our cases and did a population, I don't know what you call this, chart graph, pie chart, thank you. And I went to see what is the population that could be served by us potentially. Out of the Black population, 29% could be benefited by our services, white population, 12%, and Native American population specifically is 17% could qualify for our services. This is what it looks like as far as the people we're assisting at South Carolina Legal Services. A huge majority is the Black and white population, with our diverse communities being very minor.
The percent, but what are the numbers? How many cases or people are you servicing
Every year.
every year?
So I'm actually running a report right now. I will update this as soon as I have that report. But we see at least 10,000 people every year.
So knowing my community, let me just say that. Access to legal services, it has it's a dual thing.
Yes.
Sometimes it's perceived that maybe these legal services is not as equipped as a private lawyer to service their needs. So they don't have funds for private. So I feel like the connotation of legal services that they can access may mean to them that they're not going to get as the
The
quality.
quality. No, I agree.
Um,
I will say, well, I work specifically in the Charleston office. And I have met the attorneys from the other offices as well. But I will say specifically the Charleston office, and I see them every day and I interact with them and I hear them when they're talking to their clients and the closing parties, that they're passionate about the work that they do. They wouldn't be doing this work if they weren't passionate about it.
What's the experience level of these lawyers that are these new lawyers that are
So
coming?
most of the attorneys that we have been there for about 8 to 12 years. We have some attorneys who have been there like 30 years. Because we do not have enough attorneys, we do hire new attorneys as well, and we try to equip them as best as possible. But most of our attorneys have been there for over a decade.
And you've seen a lot of people, but you have limited resources and attorneys and you have all these cases. Are those people on a waiting list or to be seen?
No. So I will get that in my presentation as far as the time period that it takes. But sorry, but no, there is no waiting list per se. We prioritize our cases as far as the type of cases that we can take. So we have a list of priorities because our cases are free. We will immediately let the person know if their case is not something that we see. And I will explain the reasons why we would not take those cases. My remote is, sorry. Is it working?
Is it green light on?
Huh?
Green light.
No. But just to expand on your question, yes, I will say that our attorneys are 100% passionate about the work that they do. They could be doing private practice and making 50, 60, 70,000 more, but they choose to stay with us because they really care about the people. But okay, while we wait, like I said, we have 8 offices in the state. I'm based in the Charleston office. Okay, I really wanted to get to this slide, the one after the chart, the pie chart. And what does this slide represent for me? I will say that many agencies or individuals strive for equality. And I don't think that equality is the right way to go because our communities face different barriers depending on their specific situations. So we have to strive to close down those barriers, like offering the same resources to everyone will not give them the same access because of those additional barriers. So we should, at the bare minimum, strive for equity. But the the main thing we should strive for is liberation. And what does this mean? Eliminating all barriers so that we can have the same access to justice. And I really like this quote by Asakara Shakur. It says, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains." So it is our job to help each other eliminate those barriers, even when it comes to communication as far as services. Like, I'm happy to be here giving services, but let's say that some communities do not want to seek those services because of lack of trust or lack of information, then it's kind of like a two-way street to eliminate those barriers. So South Carolina Legal Services has 8 offices around the state. We serve all 46 counties. We have an office close by here on Bull Street, but we have other offices around the state to cover the different areas. And like I mentioned earlier, my main office is Charleston, but I'm also statewide employee, so I can come to any location if you need me. I have in the past come to some of the powwows around the state, and I'm happy to continue doing that. But I think one of the things I would want South Carolina Legal Services to do is not create a connection with me specifically, because positions are temporary, but an organization can create a more lasting impact with the communities. So one of the goals that I personally have is that each office goes to different powwows and creates that connection with the Native American communities instead of it being me specifically. So what does bridging the justice gap mean? It means that minorities face significant barriers when accessing services. This can be barriers such as language access, immigration status, lack of information, lack of transportation, isolated areas where they cannot get to an attorney, different circumstances that can be a barrier for communities to access justice. So how do we bridge this gap? We do outreach to the community directly. We go to community events. We do legal clinics. We do presentations such as this one right here. And we also do direct representation. So some agencies only offer referrals, and some agencies can do direct representation, which is, in our case, we can do that for our communities. So what do? We represent people in court. We do pro se clinics, trainings, legal clinics. We also have some interactive tools online so that you can help yourself represent yourself. We do referrals to other agencies if necessary. And our areas of law are very diverse. We offer a plethora of services from consumer, education, family law, education, employment, housing, immigration, probate, pretty much anything that you can think of that is civil, we can assist with. As I mentioned earlier, we have priorities. So based on, it's a case-by-case basis, but we do accept a majority of the cases that we get intakes for. So this is it goes a little bit farther into the type of cases within the types of law. For education, for example, we see suspension, expulsion, bullying. We also see special education if a child needs IEP plans for 504. Elder law, we see wills, advance directives, probate. Employment, we see wages, unemployment, driver's license suspensions, expungements if someone has a criminal record. For family law, we see adoption, divorce, custody, delayed birth certificates, housing, foreclosures, evictions, public benefits. We can help you appeal social security denials, SNAP denials, veteran benefit denials. And then we see individual rights, this is very specific to victims of domestic violence who need help with immigration. And we also assist farm workers around the state who are here seasonally. So the cases that we do not handle and that we will reject are criminal cases, any litigation on behalf of prisoners, fee-generating cases. So these can be worker compensation cases, personal injury cases, abortion cases, desegregation cases, class actions, lobbying or any political action, and representation of undocumented citizens of South Carolina or residents of South Carolina. And the exception is if they're a victim of crime. So we also offer accommodations. I mentioned before, what is it that organizations are doing to bridge that gap and bring equity? So one of the things we do is we do home visits to our clients who are unable to come to the office. We also have language lines for our clients who are non-English speakers. So we have about 120 languages available. We have county. We can come to the county. So some, like, let's say like Lee County doesn't have an office there specifically, but we can meet the client in that county, or we'll make arrangements to meet the client the closest location possible. And we also have late office hours. During the summer, we try to open past regular business hours to accommodate our clients. So what is the requirement or the eligibility for our services? We go off base the federal poverty guideline to help our clients, and we go a little bit past that. So our limit is 125% of household income. For a household of 4 people, that's $39,000 a year. In addition to that, we have some waivers and some exceptions for different things. So we have, for example, Title 3B is for our clients who are 60 years or older. It doesn't matter their income, we will still see them. Or if a client is a victim of domestic violence, we will also assist them even if their income is over 200%. And we also have some eligibility as far as citizenship, like I mentioned before. And we go based on the poverty guideline. So what is it that clients pay? They pay nothing to us. Our attorneys are completely free. However, sometimes the court will order a guardian ad litem, which is a special type of attorney for custody cases, for example, or name change cases, or sometimes if they request process fees for a divorce. And this is, let's say that someone is getting divorced and you cannot find that person for whatever reason, then you have to go to a very specific process, which is service by publication, where you publish in the newspaper. It sounds funny, but it's something real. Like sometimes you cannot find your spouse, so you publish in the newspaper so-and-so wants to divorce so-and-so, and like, this is like the notice essentially. And it has to be published at least like, some weeks there, but you have to pay for that. So sometimes in very specific circumstances, we'll pay for that if the client requests that, but yes. So how to apply? We have an intake line, which is here in Colombia, and it's open Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. This is the phone number right here. We also do online intakes for those who feel more comfortable doing an online application. And finally, we have in-person intakes for emergencies. We try to go by the first two, but the last one is for emergencies. And you asked about the timeline, the waiting list. So once you do the intake, let's say that you call today, Monday, it takes 5 to 10 business days to get assigned an attorney or get denied. So by next week, Tuesday, you would be getting a letter in the mail indicating whether you've been accepted for services, or if you have, who is your advocate, or if you have not, what are the reasons for you getting denied. Most of the times these denials come with a counsel and advice letter, advising the client of their rights or advising them of what can they do if they don't have representation, and also giving them a referral to the lawyer referral line so they can seek attorneys who are, they work with low income clients, so their service fees are lower than private attorneys. So they call the intake line, they get in the queue. I will say though that because we do receive about 500 calls a day, for example, some of the calls will sometimes cut out, like you'll be on the queue and then they will disconnect. But once you try again, you will get someone on the line, which I personally prefer to do an online intake so they can call you directly. But most people who are older will not want to do the online intake. So they'll have to try again. And their case will be transferred to a local office. So our intake office is here in Colombia, but we have the 8 offices around the state, and we will assign the office closest to the person, or if the case is very specific, we'll assign it to the attorney who is most familiar with those type of cases.
So if individual needs help, like they're being evicted.
Mhm.
And they have 30 days, and by the time they call and try and get help, will they have like an injunction on their eviction till?
That would be considered an emergency intake. So
Okay.
when they call someone, they'll say, hey, I have a hearing. And sometimes it's not even 30 days. Sometimes it's, I have a hearing in 5 days, 10 days. I got this letter in the mail. And we'll do an emergency intake. We'll connect them to an attorney right away.
Well, I was wondering
Mhm.
about
Yes, so that's like an emergency. And to give you an idea of the other things we do, we also offer free brochures. You should have received a brochure by now. That's our general services brochure, but we have very specific topics. Let's say for eviction, like you mentioned right now, or housing, we'll have a brochure that has very specific information on housing, how to get your landlord to make repairs, how to protect yourself or represent yourself against an eviction. We also have online resources where it covers common legal challenges in short videos. And we have some, within the website, we have a housing law center, very specific to housing issues, where it gives a plethora of services and information on housing services. So I don't know if you guys, I mean, if you want, you can scan it now, or you can scan it later once Joshua shares the slides with you. Yes, any questions?
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you. I would urge you to follow us on social media because we do post many videos on our YouTube channels regarding legal resources and anything going on in the community. But thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. All right. We're gonna go on through our agenda. Brenton will come on and give us a legislative update. He's our chief of staff. Is Britton gonna do online or is he coming
He
in?
said he was coming in online.
I'm right here. I'm about to share my screen.
He's going.
Who's on the call?
Yes, he's doing it over Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
we
can.
can hear you. We can't see you.
All right.
Stop sharing.
One quick thing. Are you able to see my screen?
We are getting that set up right now, Brenton.
Okay. As that's getting set up, just wanted to welcome everybody once again. Great information that was shared. On the call earlier was Alexis Scipio. The agency is in the process of doing a strategic plan. And so we have identified members of various advisory committees for the agency and also our board of commissioners who will participate in kind of acting as a focus group so that the facilitator can get some more information. Staff is going to attend that as well. So just wanted to be mindful. Unfortunately, she had to leave for another meeting at 11 a.m. this morning. However, she just wanted to let everyone know that there were 3 individuals who were identified, and you'll receive emails from her within the next few days. Joshua will send some information out to those who are identified as to who she is once again, and then the types of questions she has will come directly from her. But we appreciate your assisting us in that endeavor. We're looking for the next, how we're going to push the agency forward over the next 3 to 5 years. So are you able to see my screen at all?
Still trying to share that.
Which one is Brent?
I think maybe we need to stop the share.
Yeah, which one?
Stop this one, turn this one off. And his has the,
He should be on the regular Zoom.
yeah, just go to Zoom.
That's fine, we'll stop sharing.
Kind of talk through. So okay, let me see. This is going to.
Brent can share you.
There it is. Oh, but it's not showing up on the.
Well, I don't have a lot. Really, it's just kind of a continuation from the last quarterly meeting that we had a few months ago, which was really a discussion about the bills to be introduced for the upcoming general session for the General Assembly. And so really, it was just as a very brief and very quick rundown of those 5 bills that were proposed to be introduced in January. The first one was designating the second Monday of October of each year as Columbus Day and/or Indigenous Peoples Day here in the state of South Carolina. That was previously filed last session as H 3435. The next one is the duration of hunting and fishing licenses that was introduced in the Senate this previous session. And then we looked at 843 and 846, which were previously submitted. Those were bills that concern prohibitions on solicitations from groups representing, I should say, misrepresenting themselves as a South Carolina-based Native American tribe or entity, or those who want to describe part of their nonprofit corporation using a Native American entity's name. And so those are up to be reinstituted, or I should say refiled with the General Assembly. And then the final one was going through what would be termed as the South Carolina Indigenous Child Welfare Act, or SC-ICWA, which would be modeled off the federal law. And of course, we have the general election that's coming up in November. And so kind of the consensus was to see what the races will look like after the general election in November, and then strategize to then go forward with those members who will be part of the General Assembly coming forward, and then meeting with them to see who would be open to refiling or filing these bills for the next session. So that was really the only update that I had, and I'll definitely field any questions that anyone has at this point. All right, well, thank you. Seeing none, as always, do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. And I thank you for your time.
So they're hoping to get with a lot of private archaeologists to basically create a network so they can be aware, and then they can better make you guys aware of any digs dealing with any of your tribes or any of your tribal areas and things along that line. Like I said, his contact information is here. He is also over Nina with NAGPRA. The next thing on our agenda is her list that she has prepared, that she has sent us of the 6 active NAGPRA requests going on right now. There may be more going on in the state. She is looking into that. They are only brought in during the final period of it.
So you have a copy of her report in your folders to look over. And if you have any questions, please send it to Joshua. We'll get it to Nina.
I do have a question. When this whole process started, I mean, about a year ago, I do believe, when Nina came on board, I think it was about a year ago, they were working on identifying and sending out the letters and getting responses and had a huge success on that. But one of the requests from this agency or this committee was to still try to be involved or notified of these requests, of these repatriation requests. So we're not getting that information. That's my concern, is this is why we're asking for it, because we're hearing from different organizations like Charlestown Landing or some
Right,
other agency that there's these talks going on, but we're left out the loop. And so we would like to, at least, I know we don't have a voice in how they're being repatriated because it's federal, but we would like to be informed.
Right.
And maybe we have some type of information.
Yeah, this is it in your.
Yeah,
packet.
that's what you
Yeah, but
put.
this is what I'm saying, we had asked for this.
So-
We had asked for this, you know, I'm not
I
sure
think
why
that's
it's
the
not.
process I think you have to have as a state tribe. Now, this, let me know, this is incredible progress in a short period of time on negative.
I understand.
For a very long time, there was no movement, and I believe she's been there 18 months.
Mhm.
It's just incredible progress.
And going on to a little bit, I know most of you are aware, but we were very close to the process that was initially in place with unidentified remains. And then the federal mandate changed, so there is no longer any unidentified remains, because every county and every state all across the nation now has at least one federal tribe assigned to it, many of them multiple federal tribes. And if you'll see, you can also see which tribes are currently in talks, or the ones taking possession of the bodies or the remains. Most of them are either the Catawba or the Eastern Band of Cherokee. I'm trying to see real quick which. It is in the determination. You will be able to see on the 3rd bullet point of each of these reports what federal tribes are taking ownership for repatriation. I know that I am trying to work very closely with Nina there, but what they're saying is they really only informed about this after the fact, when everything is taken. And they have to then now put this paperwork for it being picked up by these federal tribes. So we're trying to see if there's anything that can be done to get a bit of a heads up, even at the state level.
So my question was, some of the discussion was repatriating back to where they were kind of dug up if it can happen. Like at Charlestown Landing, and that's a park, and they can go back and be safe and secure. I thought that was kind of the general idea of what was going to happen. Do we know if that is occurring, or is this something once they are claimed and picked up, then that's it for us? I
I don't
mean,
know the answer to your calls. I can get Nina to contact you.
I know that I have been broaching that with Nina, and she said that they are very out of the loop. They're trying to follow up with a lot of the entities or the specific representatives about plans, but that is not something that they're required to get, and they usually do not get any of that. I know that from my talk with Charlestown Landing, they are currently working, I believe, with the Muskogee, the Catawba, and the Osagie Nation, maybe, I believe. I think they said it's one holdout about repatriating all the things back to the park where they have their plaque where the village is found. That is not in here. I'm waiting for a report from them that I will then send out to all the
I
parties
think
here.
Chief Creel is invested in that one as well.
But we are really trying to seek a way to get more information, because right now the only time the state at any level gets information is when they get contacted, these federal tribes are coming in to pick up the bodies.
All right. Dr. Fenton is going to come to talk about our Native American statistical profile. Every year we do a statewide statistical profile, and our research team just completed the AAPI statistical profile, and they're beginning their work on the Native American statistical profile. And he's going to talk with you on about the survey that they are putting out so that we can gain the data we need for this profile.
Good morning, everyone. So thank you very much, Dr. Acosta. Thank you very much, Chiefs, and everyone else who's here in attendance. As you know, it can be difficult for us to find data specifically on the state recognized tribes, which the agency is supposed to represent. Recently, with the 2020 census, they did produce a detailed demographic count of people by tribal affiliation and included a long list of state recognized tribes in South Carolina. So that's, at least according to my history working with data here, that's been great. But as an agency which is primarily interested in the socioeconomic development of minority communities, we didn't have any economic data associated with those numbers. We just have basically tribal affiliation, age, and place of residence. And there's some suppression of that evidence when you go to really local levels just to try to preserve the identities of people. The Census Bureau, they're trying to ensure that people aren't being targeted because of their racial or ethnic identities. But anyways, we thought it would be prudent for us, especially to provide data which could be useful for their tribal communities, for our agencies, sort of mission and objectives, and also to just, I think better represent those socioeconomic conditions of the tribal communities in the state to collect data directly from the various communities. And this is the survey that we designed. I know that people are probably surveyed out after several years of COVID, and I'm constantly getting inundated with surveys. Now it's political season. I'm sure text messages about who you want to vote for, blah, 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 blah. But anyways, we wanted to make the survey as approachable as possible, as easy to fill out as possible, and as useful for our goals and for hopefully some of the tribal communities' goals as far as socioeconomic development is concerned. So can you click? There's some boilerplate information. This is not live yet, but thank you to Chief Collins and Chief Kale for providing some feedback last time, and we still want to ensure that the final version that goes out is, meeting the needs of everyone involved. So location information, we're going to use zip codes. We don't want to ask people's personal addresses. How many people live in your household? This is, you can provide as many people as possible. Hopefully, the idea would be that only one person from each household fills out this survey. But when you do put a number greater than 1 and up to 8 people, you can fill out personal information for those people involved. So, Rashard, can you just populate this with some? I would put maybe our zip code here. Put one person because it's going to be the same. Just so we can go forward, because some of these questions are required, and I can't show you the other questions. So put one, please, because then we have to fill out 4. So if we did have more than one person rather than household point of contact, the next people like household member number 2, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, it'll be the same series of questions. The age of that person, you can put a random age, it doesn't matter.
So while he's doing that, Dr.
Yeah.
Fenton, so I know you're trying to get the statistical information for socioeconomic reasons. How does that come down to how it really comes to our community? So you're gathering the information, you're gonna compile a report, then you're going to what? Say, these are the issues that we have and do what?
Yeah, so the idea for the final statistical profile would actually be, we'll we'll have a physical copy that, you know, we can hand out.
Okay, is it-
We can use for grants, we can use it for providing, you know, sort of, I guess, a public face for information about your tribe, other than, you know, obviously a tribal website or a Facebook group or something like that.
Specific statewide.
Well, no, we're gonna have, the idea will be that we collect the data and we'll be able to identify data by tribal affiliation.
Right.
So that we can, what I ultimately want to do is have an interactive statistical profile that when you click on the web page, you know, you start with a map and all of the tribal, you know, what's that? Not regions, but the actual offices for the tribal lands will be populated on the map. You click on the land and then it'll give you a gateway to information about that tribe and then onto the statistical report. Yeah.
We're discussing this about, people who have multiple tribal
Yes.
and which person it applies to in your
Yeah.
questions, like person
Yes.
number one, is this lineage or tribal association?
Yeah, so each person can identify more than one tribal affiliation. In that
That's
case,
gonna cause an issue.
it won't necessarily.
We know.
Well, okay, so we can, when we count, you know, somebody's affiliation as a member of a tribe, now obviously, we're gonna basically take the table and sum up the number of people and then weight that number according to, you know, what we know about the underlying structure of each tribe and say, okay, this tribe, Edisto Nacha is hypothetically, you know, 550 people based on the number of survey responses. Now, somebody might identify as Edisto Nacha, might also identify, you know, hypothetically as Wasamasar or whatever. But that person could be counted twice, you know. Yeah.
So your number's gonna be a little skewed.
They won't be,
Because-
because on the total number of affiliated people to a tribe, we'll have one number, but when we talk about the people that identify as members of a tribe, it'll be, those numbers won't sum together.
Identify two multiple tribes.
Okay,
They might have lineage, but they have to
Yeah.
pick a tribe.
okay,
They have to pick.
all right. We can change that then. So we can change, I guess, the wording on that, and just have people pick the. But, you know, we have all the state recognized tribes and we have the Catawba as well, and then we have, I think down further, other non-South Carolina state or federally recognized tribes. So if you're a federally recognized tribe of a different state or a state recognized tribe of a different state, you can click that as well. And that might be the case for some people who have mixed households. And then you might also have somebody in your household that is not a member of any officially recognized state or federal tribe, and you can click that as well. So each person in the household can fill this out, and if you have a household where, you know, two people are married and they're from different tribes, each person can be represented. You know, click the tribal identity that they identify with, or if they're married to somebody that's not a member of a tribe, they can also have that person represented, and so we can find, you know.
Go back to that statement. Each member of the household fill that out, but I thought you had a head of household.
Yeah, the one person of the household head is gonna fill this out for everybody. So the idea is that only one person has to see this in the household, and you don't have to consult with multiple. And I know you had an issue last time, Chief Collins, about the potential for multiple families living in households. We should be able to address that easily with this structure, and we included the language in the description of the head of the household and what a household consists of. Can you just randomly click on some of the, just one of the tribes? Because when we go down, and I think also one of these gender options. These are all required. And then we get into some of the questions that are associated with socioeconomic determinants of development. If somebody attending a school, that's going to be important, obviously, for people that are children between the ages of 4 and 18, and also college, you know, people attending college. Does somebody finish high school or GED? That's important for determining, you know, all sorts of socioeconomic metrics. Does the person have a college degree? Do they serve in the United States Armed Forces? Are they covered by health insurance? So here, you know, because we had some concerns about health insurance and people not necessarily being aware of the difference between private insurance, worker provided insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, et cetera, do they have insurance or not? And then if covered by health insurance, is the coverage provided by Medicaid or secured through the ACA healthcare marketplace? That's another question. And then receive government assistance, SNAP, HAMP, Medicaid, EBT, food stamps, rental assistance, et cetera. Has legally recognized mental or physical disability. Basically, are they able to collect some sort of disability or recognize disabilities? Down a little bit further, have they ever purchased a South Carolina fishing license? Have they ever purchased a South Carolina hunting license? We tried in the past to obviously work with DNR to potentially, I guess, produce some sort of legislation that would give state recognized tribal members access to hunting and fishing license basically for free. The pushback from them was that this would basically create $1 million shortfall in their funding based on the estimations of the amount of Native Americans in the state, and hypothetically supposing that each of those people were purchasing hunting and fishing licenses every single year. I don't personally think that, you know, state recognized tribal members equal the total amount of estimated Native Americans in the state of South Carolina. And I also think based on age profiles, people's locations, what they do for a living, et cetera, that they're necessarily purchasing hunting and fishing license every single year. So I don't think the shortfall is going to be that much for them. I think it would be more of a symbolic thing. But anyways, I think we need some evidence to marshal together and put together a better sort of baseline study for presenting legislation. Hopefully in the future they'll provide some of those benefits to people. Employment and labor participation. We're kind of just using basic Census Bureau concepts here. Whether somebody's retired, unemployed, but looking, not in the labor force, employed. Annual gross personal income. This is an individual, just an estimate, kind of how much income they have per year. We're actually not going to be able to go forward unless we click on all of these.
All of them?
Yeah,
You got names?
it won't go through.
And there's a sample in your packet. If you have some concerns, just email Dr. Fenton.
Totally.
And that way he can make the adjustments in the survey, because the survey is not live right now. This is just the draft that he's going through, and we want to get it as close to perfect as we possibly can. There is no perfect anything, but it's
So, yeah, it's gonna be on your website, right?
gonna be electronic.
So my question.
Primarily, we would like to do it electronic because it's easier to compile the information that way.
Get multiple people redoing it so many times. I mean,
You
how
know,
do you get a true
beta
number? So if I wanted to, I could fill out your survey 5 times.
I mean, you could.
So that's one, I'm wondering how you're going to make sure your numbers are accurate, not inflated.
Yeah. So what we do know is, you know, at least rough estimates based on the census, 2020 census, and how populations have changed in the past 3 years, kind of the relative population of each tribe.
Is there a way that we can assign, our communities assign to our members, like a login or a unique identity, kind of
Like a-
login to that?
Now, when you submit something, we'll get some metadata from the submission, like basically the IP address and things of that nature. But
So that doesn't work if you have a centralized, if you like, they go down to the local church.
Yeah.
To, where to have, you know, or the library, yeah, you know.
now, I think we still need to discuss logistics as far as like where, because just putting this on our Facebook or, hey, here's the QR code, send it to people or whatever, we know that that's not going to work. We need to coordinate maybe through, you know, going to churches, going to powwows, attending meetings, things of that nature, to try to, you know, push the survey as much as possible so that we get good, you know, sample size. from each tribal community. We're also kind of discussing, I think, potentially doing paper copies because I know, if we're doing a digital copy, it's great for us here in the office. We have good, cell phone reception and everything. We can use our tablets to collect this information, but, in more rural areas, that might not be the case. So we want to potentially get as many people as possible to participate in the survey just because it, decreases errors and things like that. But we haven't got to that. We're just trying to perfect the instrument before we work on the logistics, if that makes sense.
If you have some ideas,
Yeah.
share your ideas.
I just,
And I'm-
sorry, I just know how community, I'm not gonna say generally, some people believe the more numbers they have, the more money they're gonna have to come to their community. You see where I'm going? And so it's not about fair, it's about accuracy and getting a truer picture
Yes.
of
Right.
what is going on so that you can funnel your services and those to the right areas that's gonna be impactful.
Mhm.
And not just help two households in one area when there's a
Right.
whole.
I think the thing is, we obviously won't have information about specific, like identifying information about any particular household. Because we want to preserve people's identities. We could include that information, but I think a lot of people will be more hesitant to comply with the survey at that point. But if we have information about locations, tribal communities, I think, especially when it's good information, that'll help us, direct any sort of services, contacts, funding, et cetera, to specific communities, specific areas. But I don't think, the idea is that this is not like a free pass to funding, if that makes sense.
This survey for your benefit only.
For our benefit, I'm hoping that it's for the benefit of the tribal communities first and foremost. 'Cause it would be a lot easier.
Right.
Yeah, you're saying,
Now,
we're the only ones,
might
no,
be-
all of our research has to be shared
Mhm.
with government agencies, the General Assembly, the public, all of our data.
But I'm saying though, this here, you're doing this so that will help, you better help us.
It's gonna help the agency better serve you, of
Right,
course,
that's what I'm saying.
because we rely on census data right now,
Like each tribe
and the census data a lot of times is flawed.
on their own.
We were discussing, with the census, when they come in
Right.
and their idea is, let me train you guys that's in your community to reach your people in your community. Because we're gonna get a better picture. You know who your people are, you know how to get to your people, you know what to say to your people to make sure they're completing the census. And I think that's what needs to happen here.
And that's something that we tried to get the Broadband Regulatory Agency to do, because they receive a pot of dollars that's designated for Native Americans. And they had trouble getting into communities. And that's one thing we told them is that you need to go to the chiefs and work out a way to get into the tribal areas, because they needed the numbers to show access, why there's not access to internet in the tribal communities. And I think they were trying to reach not this Chief Harris, other Chief Harris for federal, and they were supposed to come around to the chiefs of the state tribes. And I don't think they were successful in doing so. So if we could come up with a way to gather this data by going to, if you all will take a role in getting your tribal people to complete the survey, I think it helps us and it helps you, because now we'll know that you'll know there won't be duplicates.
Right.
So we're gonna have to figure out a way, and that may mean paper ballots that you all take to your communities to complete, return them to us, and we analyze from there. And that's probably the only way we're gonna be able to gather the data we need and have the accurate numbers that we're looking for in order to come up with what the social and economic issues are in tribal communities.
I think I'm sorry. Oh, I love you too. when you go to vote, you know, you come in and you get checked off, here is your go vote.
Right,
That way we can say who came in,
Right,
who's
I
gotten the
understand.
thing, we know.
I understand.
By roll number, by whatever.
yeah. So we can use an approach similar to that, but we will have to rely on you all to help do it. Even if you had a day where you set aside at a powwow, maybe you say, come over and fill this survey out at the powwow or whatever. Designate someone to have your tribal community members come in, complete the survey. That way you'll know if there are any.
And we can always come out into the community
Right.
too, because we do have the tablets.
Right.
And help work that with you.
You can
just
set up
tell us
like
what you need.
a day where we come out
Okay,
and you
that
bring folks.
makes sense.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll work those particulars out. Send, any comments you may have that will help us with this process. Because what we're trying to do, when I get into the grant funding that we just were getting through the state, these numbers are gonna be critical. Because I will need numbers down the road to increase my request to the General Assembly for grant funding for Native American tribes. This survey is gonna tell us what the educational level is, the income level is, number of people in the household. I don't know what the other questions are. I haven't gone through the entire thing, but that helps me when I go before the governor's budget folks or Ways and Means saying, this is a need in our Native American communities. We do not have adequate funding going into these rural areas or what have you. Here are the numbers that tells us where the issues are. So we're gonna need everybody's help to try and come up with the best possible data we can to support what we're trying to do here at the commission, as well as, because when the governor's office will get a copy of this Native American statistical report, it will give them real numbers to look at, numbers that they've never had. So what we're gonna do is reach out to chiefs again and ask for some more input, and then we'll come up maybe with a Zoom call of some sort to talk about how we're going to get this process started and in collecting this data.
I mean, I think we definitely need to strategize on,
Yeah.
how we're actually gonna administer the survey and collect the data, because that, right now, I just wanna make sure that the instrument is, appropriate for the
Okay.
task at hand.
Speak about the instrument for 1 second. I know I talk a lot. So I know the questions, are for things that you guys need for your numbers, but there might be some questions we need for specific for our
Exactly.
community. Can we add those questions to your survey so that we can get the numbers we need?
Well, that's what they're telling us.
Yeah, I mean, we can add any, because this is not live yet, so we can add it. Even after it's live, we can add questions.
That's what I'm saying. Send your questions or comments to it.
Now, if you're talking about like a tribal specific series of okay, you want to know if your tribe maybe has a certain condition that doesn't affect other tribes, and you want to know how, people within your community are feeling about that particular issue. That's a little bit more complicated, but we could still do it. It would just be contingent on the members of the household identifying as a specific tribe as a condition for a future question. But if all of the state recognized tribe and federally recognized tribe in South Carolina wanted to add a series of questions that you thought, sort of globally, you wanted some, feedback on, then we can add those questions. That's completely feasible. I would always say that, we want to find a balance between the length of the survey and the depth of the information we get back from it, because people do get tired of hearing about surveys.
Is there a timeline on that, a deadline, like when this survey needs to be done? I mean, is it gonna be a all-year thing, a monthly thing, or?
I'm assuming that it's gonna take at least a year to collect the data, just because I'm sure we're gonna have to hit different powwows and different events to ensure that we get data saturation, and we still haven't even started planning that out. And once we plan that out, I think it'll be more feasible to say, here's the timeline. But we would ultimately like to have a data collection period, stop data collection once we get enough data, or once we determine that this is the end point of the data collection period, and then analyze the data and compile the information in the statistical profile, statistical document. So just to kind of wrap up really quickly, after you fill out the information for the individuals in the household, it's going to ask you or ask the person filling out the survey information about the household in general, whether or not the structure that you reside in is owned free and clear, owned under mortgage, rent, occupied without paying rent. These are just census categories that we're using right now. How much do you currently pay on a monthly basis to reside in this property? This is important, especially I think for certain areas that are feeling a lot of economic development pressure, where cost of living is increasing, and people might be feeling that they're especially going to be, forced out in the next few years if some sort of new legislation or this, that, and the third assistance isn't applied. But we just kind of want to get a feel for the cost of living, cost burden rates for people identifying as certain members of certain tribes across the state. Can you go down a little bit? I click randomly also, and then
So like that rent own, what if I want to say, do you live on air property?
then you own free and clear.
No, heirs property is where a group of people
Like
Yeah.
all your siblings.
have
own,
ownership, part
But
ownership
you're
of
the
the
only one
land.
living on it.
But are you paying for it?
It matters to us because of development and
Absolutely.
keeping those lands.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. So,
And there could be an ownership question there,
yeah.
land ownership,
Because they really don't, they own it in part,
right,
but they can't sell it.
Right.
unless-
Okay. all of the members.
And maybe it's so many years back of air property that you don't even know who all the owners are.
And it's hard to get all together.
it's hard, it's a
we have-
terrible system.
Okay.
We have the
that
same thing in the African American community, same thing,
Yeah, we had.
bad system.
You're right, because that's my grandfather, had air property, and he had 4 sons that this property was, but each one of them had to sign off on that particular piece before it could be sold or developed or anything, so it creates some issues.
But it's good to ask that question,
Yeah.
Mhm.
are you living on heirs property? Because then I can do another series with the heirs property folks, who can tell you what to do about heirs property. How you can form
Or
a trust.
preserve it.
Exactly, you can preserve it by starting a trust of some sort. So it would be good if we could put that kind of question there. Do you
Okay.
live on heirs property?
All right, we can include that. And I think the reason I didn't, because we did discuss that in the meeting that we had, was that I didn't know if that was the concept that would only apply to African American communities or.
No. Native Americans and African Americans, big
Okay.
issue.
All right, so we can include that question. We have a question about access to infrastructure, broadband, high-speed internet, water, cellular reception, sewer, paved roads, mass
We definitely need
transportation.
that.
Obviously, we expect that depending on how close or far away from urban areas, that these responses will be different. Is this the only property that you claim in the case that people might have multiple properties? What is the zip code? If you answer yes, the question will ask you for the zip code for your second property. Next. And then these are voluntary responses and I think here's where we can add some questions perhaps that are more qualitative in nature. The idea is that we want to get, some context and texture about what it means to be a member of state recognized or federal as a Catawba in the state of South Carolina, around what do you think the biggest problem affecting your community is, and what are the most important things that would help your community be more prosperous. But we can add more questions anywhere throughout the survey, especially if you all see the need. I think, the heirs property, we can add that as an option on the property ownership structure question, for where people reside. But other than that, I mean, I'm fully open to adding questions. I don't want to add too many more because I think it'll just get unwieldy for people to answer it, but I think that on the surface, this gets at the battery of variables that we typically analyze when we're talking about African American, Hispanic, Asian American, Pacific Islander communities that tend to have more responses in the American Community Survey. This has been an issue with the Native American, is that there are just so few Native Americans in the state of South Carolina when they conduct these surveys. So few people actually are being surveyed, and we have data that has household income data where the error is, if the estimate is like $36,000, the error is, $26,000. So we have this huge margin of where the real data point might be. And I think it just makes a lot of sense for us to work directly with the tribes so we get specific data about tribal communities that then we can go to other state agencies. We can present, legislation, proposals, budgeting, et cetera, that are more specific to the data that is relevant to the tribal communities that we address at CMA. So I'm open to any sort of criticism, any additions. Please email me at any point and I'll address that. Or if we can set up another meeting with Josh to try to, combine forces and come up with a better set of, or add a better set of questions. Does anybody have any questions? Sorry. Right.
You shouldn't ask that.
Thank you, Dr.
No,
Fenton.
thank you.
So this is, we're just trying to get some good, clear data. When I came here, September 4th, 2018, if you all will remember, we had armed security in the room because CMA staff and our Native American communities did not like each other. So when I came in, well, certain folks, but I can't, I have to generalize it. I can't point your finger. I can, but I won't. And I asked the question, what do you get for being state recognized or a group? And you all said a letter from the board, from the commissioners that says, tells you what you already know. I said, okay. So I've been working, and you all know that I work hard for my Native American tribal communities. We have been working hard to try and get legislation passed. We finally got the governor to give each of you a proclamation for your tribes so that you will have something other than the letter from our board. This time around, I went before the General Assembly and told them that we need funding to help our tribal communities. They wanted us to first start as a pilot program with one-time monies for $250,000. Well, when it went through the General Assembly, they made it recurring. So we were awarded the $250,000 to start giving as grants to our tribal communities. In your packet, you will see the guidelines for the grant. We are in the process of contracting a company to set it up so that you can apply online, which makes it easy to process. And you will receive a list of items you will need to have in place before you attempt to even submit the application. I think for state recognized, the maximum this year is $20,000, and for groups, $15,000. And what we're going to do is monitor how well we manage these grants before I could go and ask for an increase in that amount. I think that it's only fair that the state provides some kind of funding benefit to the tribal communities. And this is a step in the right direction to do just that. You have a set of the grants guidelines as well as the application, sample application, that will be electronic. We are hoping that this company, I just signed the procurement form to pay the company to design the application online. We're hoping that you all will be able to go in and start applying. Do we have a target date?
We are still working with admin to try to get that over. But for a lot of you, I know you've worked with the South Carolina Arts Commission. It is going to be modeled very similar. The grant management software is the same software. And of course, we'll be here to help walk you through the process of the entire thing. So, just give us a call. We will write it with you. We will edit little things if they need to be edited. We're here to make sure you get your funding.
Question.
Yes.
So I know some of us who do powwows around this time of the year that get assistance from the CMA, because before it was a cap of a certain amount of money
Right.
the CMA would give us. how is that gonna affect us while you're working on this process? Are we gonna be able to,
I will still, assist in any way that we can financially. Because we do have to put this process in place before we start doing the grant. So if you need, like, I think we do the 1,500 that we do to help. We're gonna go ahead and still grant that to those who requested, because we thought about it. It won't even make sense if, if, for example, if your powwow is this month, even if we say, well, we can reimburse you for your receipts, it doesn't help you right now. So therefore, we will continue to support what you're doing right now. So just send your request into Joshua and we will sign off on it. So that way you can still get the resources from the commission to help with your powwow. But I'm hoping that by the time we get to the November powwows, we will have the grants ready to go. We're hoping in October to have it ready to go. So if there's a need, Joshua, if you get that to me,
I will.
we can do that.
And
Any questions? Go
I
ahead.
think right after this, I just wanted to mention, we do have Global Core Strategies and Consulting. Sadly, she had to leave early, but she's going to be working with all of our advisory committees and the board of directors to try to get some feedback as they're making our 5-year plan. So she will be reaching out and I will be sending you guys those emails.
Yeah, and that strategic plan will be, where do you want to see your organizations over the next 3 to 5 years as it relates to the commission? What would you like to see different? What would you add to it? This is our strategic planning session. Alexis, she is a part of the consultant group that's going to be helping us to put it together. She will reach out to some of you with questions so that we can incorporate it into our strategic plan. So Joshua will definitely get you the information. He will send names to Alexis. You will get an email from Alexis Scipio. And when you get that, please help her to get the answers that she needs in order to complete our strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years. Any questions? All right, staff updates. We have one back here. Alicia Page, she is a part of our research team. She is one of our research analysts. What areas do you focus on, Alicia?
I focus on health, socioeconomic, anything having to do with life expectancy. So any type of medical or health information that you need, you can reach out to me and I'll get it for you.
So she's dealing a lot with infant mortality and things of those issues, which is very heavy in African-American communities, but we need to know how it impacts your communities. So if you have something that you want Alicia to look into, please reach out to her and she will start doing some research on it.
Superstar of the meeting, Rashard. He's our new IT.
Rashard, yes. Rashard is our IT guy. Well, he's IT furniture mover. He does a whole lot of things in the office, but he's brand new to staff. I think you all knew Mauricio. Mauricio left and went with another company, and Rashad took that position. So he is our new IT guy on the block. Any updates or any conversations from any of you?
We can do a round table, you know, Chief Harris.
I'm fine.
What's going on in the Wassamo, in the Catawba?
Man, what's not?
Because I haven't talked to you in a while.
Well, you know, we're just still 638 in our healthcare. Of course, you know, we have different economic development drivers that we're trying to facilitate at this time. We're trying to work on finalizing our agreement with the state tribe.
Okay.
That'll be next month, like October 19th.
Okay.
Is our next general council meeting. We will have elections on October 5th to fill the 2 vacant seats on our executive committee. But other than that, you know, we're just really trying to do a lot of legislation work right now. We're trying to find our second casino site, and we're just moving ahead steadily.
Very good, very good. Now your agreement with state tribes, that would include funding. You'll become a funding source for our state tribes.
Yeah, well, the South Foundation will,
Okay, I see.
and whatever, the exec committee.
And it would create a joint body
Very
that could then
good.
get federal grants that state tribes can't get by themselves.
Very good.
Right.
Excellent.
Good, all
Excellent.
right.
That's a great idea. So resources are starting to head your way. How many of you received any broadband money?
I spoke to broadband in regards to coverage in certain parts of our community that were lacking. They don't send the money to the communities, they send it to the service agencies that service the communities. So, because that's who's going to run it and support it. So we're in the works of talking about getting service installed in where there's not fiber, there's still got copper going out. in certain
Oh, wow.
areas. So the conversation has been initiated. They're looking at some of that, but that was my first attempt, and I think Joshua got me in touch with them through this agency here to just have the conversation.
I had some other conversations with them as well. It seems like a lot of the issues come down to wording in legislation, because it seems to be a very similar issue to, the surplus store where it specifically says reservation, which is one of the reasons why we're hoping to help work on a reservation bill and also try to see. But they said that they are working with the tribal communities, even if they cannot specifically do that, because they can decide what areas get priority.
Right.
So they will prioritize those areas where tribal communities are as a good faith measure.
In Berkeley County, the chamber is partnering with broadband as well as Google to set up resource centers at locations throughout communities. I think they have 6 already that I've attended 5 of the 6 groundbreaking or ribbon cutting services. And what they're doing is they're identifying like community centers or historical sites. For example, like on Santee Park, there may be a building there that can be used by the community to set up a resource center which has laptops and broadband for telemedicine and other resources you need internet for. You may want to talk with Elaine. She's with and I can't think of Elaine's last name at the moment. She's with the chamber. I'll email her information to you because there's a lot. We have almost $1 billion in the state of South Carolina for broadband infrastructure. And there was a separate provision where funding needed to go to Native American communities, separate from all the other funding. And I need to find out where that is.
Okay.
Because you all have 501c3s.
Yes.
That makes you a nonprofit organization, which means that you could qualify for funding to set up your own resource center or whatever with broadband, even if it's not in all of the individual homes at this moment, a centralized location for your communities to have access to it. So I will find out what they did with the money that's supposed to, it's earmarked for Native American tribes. And I will find out and get that information to Josh so that he can share it with all of you. Because if you have a 501c3, you're entitled to certain things, certain funding that only 501c3s or other organizations can receive. So I will find out because I think that it would benefit your communities a lot, especially when you have activities. I think a lot of you service school groups. And when you service school groups, there's a need for internet. Therefore, you could qualify to get funding to get that service in the building where you're hosting that educational activity. So let me find out what they're doing with that pot of money. They've started, the 5-year strategic plan for broadband has been approved, and they're starting to roll out millions in October. So I need to find out where we are with that and why funding has not, someone from broadband has not come out to your communities to offer this kind of infrastructure service or building out your infrastructure for internet services.
Thank you.
So for public comments, I have spoken with Sharice, our Director of Public Information here. She says that no public comments have been sent in virtually.
Okay. All right, then we're gonna open up to the floor. Let's see, Chief Harris has given us a little update on Catawba. Chief Collins?
Well, several things have been going on that's kept us busy. We're actually we're working hard with land conservation, trying to preserve community lands. We just did a huge ownership transfer to the tribe from some family member and did some life estate work. Still working with Low Country Land Trust and Open Space
Oh, wow, yeah.
Institute and Nature Conservancy and the Audubon. So it's opening up other issues, you know, because we are not federally recognized, we're state recognized. And the state doesn't have anything on legislative for tribes to own land under their 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
So we're now looking at maybe asking for legislation to occur that's going to address state reservations.
Okay,
That's
let's see.
possible.
We've been working,
Okay,
State reservations. And so we're working with a lot of parks and trying to do our memorandums of understanding,
Mhm.
making sure that on those historic ancestral lands that we have access to them. Had very good response through Charlestown Landing, Edisto Island, and those areas. So we're still working with them. What we are finding, though, we're trying to work with Gaylord Dorothy Donnelly
oh, yes.
Institute about doing some work where they're training some of our tribal people for maintenance like forestry and
Yeah.
things like that, control burns and
Mhm.
things that we used to do historically and make sure that we are certified, because apparently you have to be certified to burn anymore. Well, yeah, did you know that? Yeah, when you got to control your smoke and everything like that. But so there's a lot of different things we're doing with land preservation, working with different organizations to bring resources in, networking. We have a powwow coming up, of course, for mine, October 12th. I did send out letters to all the leaders with your invitation. It was mailed. It's in the mail. It's in the mail. So I would love for everyone to come and be a part. One thing we do in our community, and I think I need to make sure it's clear in case you get pushback, especially the Catawba, because I saw it come through the Facebook page from some Catawba citizens. They're reaching out to us now. Are you shocked about that? We have a historical ancestry because of who we are. We're not saying we're part of the Catawba Nation. What we're saying is we have Catawba lineage of ancestry in one of our lines. And so I hope that's understood, because it might be a little bit confusing to some Catawba citizens. And
Jody.
so, you know, this is one thing that hasn't happened in the past, where now that we're more visual and more out there, people are having access to things. Then the questions, and this is what education is about, and getting to know the communities and making sure these are collaborations that are very impactful and effective, that people know who people are and their history. So what we do with our powwow is last year we're always collaborate with the Berkeley Museum, who is on the property where we have our powwow. We did our own personal exhibit last year of this is who we are, this is some of the things we did, this is our history. So I don't like repeating myself. So this year we tried to figure out what we wanted to do. So we collaborated, I think Chris has left, with the Native American Studies Center, and they said, We had a great influx of Catawba pottery. Now, a lot of our people in Berkeley County don't get up to Rock Hill or to
Right.
Lancaster to see this. I said, well, can we put an exhibit in the Berkeley Museum to highlight Catawba pottery? And those people who can attend the powwow can see the artwork, and that's what's happening at our powwow at the Berkeley Museum. It's a very small Catawba pottery exhibit.
I forgot to tell you, I got you on the general council agenda to present on October 19th.
I do what?
I'm just kidding.
See, wait. I'm like, don't do that. I'm like, all right, you bring it up right now. So we have Cherokee, basketry, we do, because we descend from Cherokee, Catawba, Edisto, Etowah, and that's our history, and we highlight it. And so if there are questions, please, we love people to ask and not assume.
Right.
We want positivity and not negativity. And that's what this powwow's about, is the unifying
Right.
of all of us to come together and celebrate and to fellowship. And so, listen, we don't discriminate.
Right.
We got an MC from North Carolina. You know, I don't want to say it. We're drummers or
Very good.
so come out and celebrate with us. We love everybody. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right.
What you got going on, mister?
Someone you summed up a lot. Like you said, we have our powwow going on, which is this weekend coming,
Okay.
and, we had a bunch of the community come together. We had to put a new roof and stuff on the buildings and stuff like that through the community. They done a really good job. They helped out a lot.
Okay.
We finally got our 501c back in good
Perfect.
standings.
That's great.
That's gonna help out a lot.
Yes.
In the future.
You could have used legal services.
Didn't know about that. But that's basically what we got going on right now.
And what time is your powwow? It's Saturday?
It's in your.
Oh, it's in
packet.
here.
We have
Okay.
all
Oh,
the
yeah, here it
powwows
is.
coming up.
Here it is. Okay, in Holly Hill. Got it. Oh, Bad Boys are gonna be there? I love the Bad Boys. Okay,
Yeah.
they're bad. Okay, all right. Sir?
Chief usually do all this. But we do have a lot of work, a lot of things going on in our community with land search, conservation and stuff, trying to get some land. We're doing a lot of work with, a lot of the houses in the community with our seniors and
Mhm.
disabled.
Mhm.
Right now, we're about to, we're really coming on our new, community center.
Nice.
So hopefully that's gonna be done in the next couple of weeks. I think it's scheduled for, I think it is October.
Okay.
And, a few other things going on, that's just, my mind just.
Sure.
You got a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot going on.
Acting chief of the walk along. Acting chief of the walk.
But, with all that, because our powwow, it's not till next year now.
Okay.
But, we have, our powwow has been actually expanding. We've been having a lot more people come out, a lot more things going on. And we don't discriminate either. We got different. We're trying to get everybody in our community to do it, but, like AMC and have a lot of head down dances and stuff.
Sure.
Is our main one is that we does, but we do, but a lot of the other stuff we get from other tribes and try to get everybody to participate.
Very good. Very good.
So what has occurred in the Low Country, and we just had a talk at the Moore Center, where we were all represented to a panel discussion. Because we are Low Country, and we do have kinship ties, and we do have things that are very similar going on because of development and things. We've kind of been very collaborative, but we're finding that our resources are kind of stretched thin because everybody wants a body to show up and do things. And so we're collaborating with the fair. They want something
yeah.
to come out. You got Gilliard Center that wants to do education pieces.
Mhm.
We've got so many things like the Moore Center and the libraries, and they want to know and be educated and have things happen. So we really definitely have to do some work within our communities to get more involvement from
Yes.
our community members, because there's such a demand at this time for representation, for education, and we just seem to, I'm running ragged. I don't know about you guys.
What y'all do with all those sweet potatoes?
Listen, that's them with the sweet potatoes. I made a
Oh,
pie
with the sweet potatoes.
from the
Okay.
ones I got.
He had
but,
what, sweet potatoes and zucchini? Man, he had a zucchini. I thought, I've never seen a zucchini this big.
Well, we were working on a community garden, and listen, I just figured out that my grandparents made it look easy, because I'm
It's
sure
not easy.
it's not easy.
All right. Walk them off.
So Cheryl's on.
Oh, yeah, Cheryl's on the Zoom, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I've been multitasking as the meeting's going on, but I do want to give an update on particularly I just signed the grant agreement yesterday for Catalyst Fund grant. And one of the specifics in that is to have each member of the coalition, which right now is loosely called, I think it's overlapping with what Sam Sewell put in for a grant yesterday, Low Country Land Trust. We defined it as Low Country Native American Heritage Corridor Coalition. Probably a little bit too long, but it was scrambling to get the grant written and identify a specific name for it. So in that grant, the one of the deliverables is participation by a representative of the coalition in a 2-day workshop that would be focused on developing a strategic plan to identify and prioritize common conservation and stewardship goals. And so the 2-day workshop would be hosted by Coastal Carolina University, since they're partnering with us on this. And that would allow a stipend to a representative from each tribe that's participating to attend the workshop. Obviously, we're already kind of doing this in the Low Country, but expanding this beyond just the Low Country to be able to really develop a good strategic plan for conservation and stewardship throughout the state for state recognized tribes, and as well as we can't leave out the Catawba, but so there's some funding available to pay participants that would be coming for the 2 days. That was one thing that we wanted to make sure was written in. And then the other is being able to expand on grant writing and administration. Some of that is available for free, but having a little bit of funding to be able to do that, because it still takes time and time away from work to be able to do that. So we're trying to expand our capacity. And then also we received a grant through Justice Outside, which is going to expand our engagement. We do the 2 school days with students, generally about 2nd grade through 5th or 6th grade, middle school, early middle school, to educate them on our culture. So we still are planning on doing that, but we are bringing back our, we formerly called it Fishing Day, Special Needs Fishing Day, but instead it's just going to be an outside event, an overnight camping with partnership with Wynyard Rivers Alliance for a short canoe trip on the Little Petey River. And this is going to be open to children in the community as well as Native children for just getting kids out into nature. We're anticipating having some additional funding coming through to expand on our interpretive trail and build a small trail with a viewing area back into the wetlands, Chinner Swamp wetlands at the back of our tribal grounds. And also hopefully finish up our longhouse, which is taking forever. So once that's done, our plan is, and we've already had this conversation, with Horry County Museum to partner with them and start doing field trips that would go from the museum in Conway out to our tribal grounds so that they would actually have an outdoor exhibit to view.
Okay.
And so that's basically where we're at. I know yesterday the grant was submitted for expanding capacity for low country work and conservation with Low Country Land Trust. And so I'm excited that's happening and that's moving forward. It's kind of starting the movement for all state tribes to be able to actually find ways to actually acquire land, whether it's through conservation easement or some other mechanism. In the meantime, I mean, a bill can take years and years. So having some type of a land bill for state tribes, we might not get to see that. It may not be something that we'll realize. So it's what's the alternative? And the alternative is holding land in conservation, which is completely able to be done at this point. And so that is part of the strategic planning that would be discussed during the 2-day workshop. We have our autumn equinox coming up this weekend on Saturday. Well, let me back up. Friday, the Chamber of Commerce is coming out to do a ribbon cutting ceremony for our interpretive trail that opened in April. And the following day, we will do our autumn equinox with fire ceremony, have a botanist from the National Fish and Wildlife. I think it's National Fish and Wildlife Federation or the Fish and Wildlife Service. I get those two mixed up. Anyways, the botanist is coming out to do a plant walk. And Dr. Carolyn Dillion will be identifying artifacts that people bring out. And then, of course, finding the location where they are getting the location where they found the artifacts, which will help with mapping. And then we also do our fire ceremony during that time for sunrise, noon, and in the late afternoon.
All right, if you could type some of that up, send it to Joshua. That way we can share it with the group.
I certainly will. It's been a little bit busy because I was unpacking while we were doing this meeting. I just finally moved and have to unpack and be ready to leave to go to Rhode Island for a Land Trust Alliance rally where I'm going to be speaking on a panel with other Indigenous leaders from the East. So I'm excited about that work and the networking opportunity from all over the United States. So.
Very good. Well, when you get a chance, just send it to us and we will share it with everybody.
I certainly will. Thank you.
Only thing I'd like to add, Dr. Cox, is our powwow 2nd and 3rd of November.
The 2nd and 3rd of November?
Yes.
And if anybody's interested, we're planning a veteran stand down day at our tribal grounds. Most likely gonna be the second weekend in December.
Okay.
We'll probably have a one-stop shop for everybody to come in and any veterans need help or services, have people there for them.
Very good.
And I do have one question that, I'd like to pose now so we can start figuring out the best time. We were looking at for the 2-day workshop, probably early spring. We kind of have to time it with Coastal and when that will work for their academic schedule. So if there's any objection for it being scheduled in early spring, if that doesn't work for other tribal leaders, can you shoot me an email?
Send a few dates. Send a few dates to Joshua for the spring, and we can share with the group to see. We can do like what is it, a job?
Poll.
Yeah, do a poll to see what dates work. So send us a few dates.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. And I'd really like to coordinate with the CMA on the workshop
Absolutely
as well. So
definitely help you with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Chief Nelson.
Chief Nelson?
Okay, a few things. I know it's a long way off. Our next powwow is gonna be May the 3rd, 2025. I know that's a distance off, but, you know, like most of you, I plan stuff 6 months to a year in advance. So put that on your calendar, May 3rd, 2025. Also, I want to make a comment. We're doing something similar to what Chief Collins is doing. We're trying to acquire land in the upstate for our tribe. I want to caution you, don't always accept a piece of land that someone wants to give you. I'm gonna give you an example. We were offered a 5-acre piece of property. Doing research on it, come to find out it's contaminated with PCBs. So that's not something we want our tribal members or the public to be walking on land that's contaminated with PCBs and the opportunity to get sick from it. So just because you're over that land, I suggest that you do some research on it to make sure that it's not landfill underneath it or it's contaminated or something like that. But we are working with several organizations and a couple of lawyers in the upstate to try to acquire land. We are getting closer and closer, and I look forward to the day when we will have that land. South Carolina, to me, is behind the times with some states. California, Minnesota, and Maine have already given, to your point, have already given land back to tribes. Even some of them were state parks that were given back to Native American tribes. And so, we need to encourage South Carolina, as you stated, to give us land, to find land. The state owns lots and lots of land across the state. And it wouldn't hurt them to take some of that land and give it back to the native tribes that was once inhabited by our people to start with. So, we're looking forward to that also. And also, I have turned in my proposal to become a tribe instead of a group. That's been submitted. Hopefully we'll have positive results to that and I can get that 25,000 instead of 15,000. 20,000. Yeah, I need to raise now. We need the money.
And the good thing is, we do well with the 20, guess what? It gives me ammunition to go and ask for more.
The more people, if we could add our 400 tribal members to that survey, because we're not on that survey, and if we could add our 400 tribal members to that survey, that increases the amount of money that you can get to distribute among these tribes here in attendance. So, we're looking forward to that. I appreciate being here and working with the other tribes.
And we know we'll see you at the powwow.
I will definitely be there.
Everybody's powwow.
Chief Pratt, I'll be at your powwow come Saturday.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Chief?
We still have problems, but we're going through it. We, been very fortunate over the last month and a half, we gave about 80,000 pounds of sweet potatoes.
Wow.
I saw the mountain of sweet potatoes.
I got a telephone call yesterday. They want to bring in another 40,000 pounds of apples.
Wow.
So if y'all kind of keep look at me in the face, when we get some, we get them. I don't know exactly when, but y'all are welcome to it. We have recently in the last year bought 71 acres of land. It's the organization gives us $96,000 to buy it. And no obligation. We do whatever we want to. So there are organizations out there that will help you. And it's mostly wetland, but it has a lot of travel grounds, do things with. We're looking for someone who's able to put a boardwalk in wetland. So if anybody knows someone that can do that, I might get in touch with you.
Get in touch with me and I can get you in touch with my contact at South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. They do sometimes put in grants to do things like that when it deals with observing wildlife and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
My turn.
Your turn.
Glad you asked me. Our powwow is September 28th. Also, I'm sorry, Chief, we can't come to your powwow this year. We got Equinox Fire tomorrow. Saturday, sunrise, noon and 4 o'clock closing. Also, we're moving forward. We got digital signs up on our tribal grounds now, advertising our powwows and different things that's going on. Just running all the time. Short term is a cook station. We got a grand info cook station that we need to put the cook fry bread in, for the powwows and different stuff. And it'd help us feed our tribal members sometime, because we've lost the trailer. We had to get rid of that old trailer that was up there. So we need the cook station. Long term, we're working with Orange County, with the administrator, Thomas Higgs, and our lobbyist in the State House to try to get us a big building up there. Talked to Thomas Higgs, Andy Howell, the tourism guy in Parks and Recreation area. And if we get the big building from the state, then they're gonna make us, the state and the county's gonna make us a tourist attraction for South Carolina. We're gonna redo our living village and increase the size of it.
Very good. So you all have a lot going on. A lot going on. Our job is to help you as much as we can move the needle, to get your powwows done, to get your activities in your communities completed. And whatever the commission can do to help along the way, just reach out to us. And I will either tell Joshua yes or no. And if we can do it, you know that we will. I'm gonna try to get to as many of the powwows. I'm gonna try to come out on Saturday, on the 21st and the 28th, and October 12th. To come out and see all the activities that's going on. I think yours is gonna grow this year. Last year was her first one. She followed. This year is gonna grow. So a lot going on. We're trying to do all that we can to help you in your growth and development. Land, I heard land is a big issue. I don't know if the state will surrender any state land. But I don't know if they will allow state reservations. I think that's a possibility if you already have the land. We just need the language in the law that says you can convert your tribal land to a state reservation.
So there's some confusion. When we got recognition through this office, there was a regulation that says we cannot ask the state for lands. But we have our own lands. That is different than asking the state or sue the state for the land.
Right.
So I think people are concerned about that one thing in the law that says our recognition is granted with the exception of asking for gambling and land to suing for land.
I got you.
So
but that means state land.
That means we are saying you owe us our land back and we want it back, and we have forgone asking them for that. But doesn't mean we can't go out and get our own land the way we want to get it. Not so. I think there's some confusion.
And Brenton and I, as well as some of the members of the advisory committee, are working with the council chiefs and other bodies about that possible legislation. And I think we were recently talking with the SCDNR. They'll have to get back to us again about possible decommissioned spaces that can be given back to certain tribes. There is certain state legislation already in the books that they're trying to look at.
Okay. All right. So there's some things in motion. If you think of anything else when you leave here, just send us an email, things that you would like for us to focus on over the next few months, and we'll be more than happy to do our part to get it done.
If you go down to Charleston and you want to go to Charlestown Landing, we just established an exhibit there that they're have for our tribe there. We've been working very hard just to educate and get our information out to the public and let them know when they come to visit, because that's a big tour site, that Native people still are here in South Carolina.
Absolutely.
So good.
Can you send a picture of that or show it where I put it in our newsletter?
Yeah, because we're recording, so we can do that.
I can pull that.
All right, if there's nothing else, thank you all so much for coming out. And, safe travels back home.
They actually have the room for about an hour afterwards for a
Oh, I got
council
you.
chiefs meeting.
Got it.
Yes, it's a different meeting, not our meeting, their meeting.
All right, so the council of chiefs will be meeting here. Oh, have